All organizations are required to interact with their environment. Organizations depend on their environment to provide the necessary resources and to consume their products. The products must be acceptable to society so that organizations can stay in business. Each environmental sector represents an important segment of the environment that has the potential for influencing the survival and effectiveness of the organization. In strategic planning, managers need to examine each of these sectors to discover any competitive advantages they can exploit or weaknesses they should avoid. The environmental sectors for business include raw materials, financial resources, consumers, technology, industry, economy, government, and legislation, and the people. Examining the economic and social forces influencing the organization, especially the long-term composition of the labor force and the future availability of employees, is called environmental scanning. Environmental scanning also requires a careful examination of economic conditions, competition, technological advances, labor force changes, and legislation. During high unemployment levels, more highly skilled workers are employed, and they expect higher than normal wages. But at the same time, the surplus labor tends to reduce the wage level. HR managers are expected to actively participate in the formation of state and federal laws as part of their role in the strategic management process. We need to understand the legislative process and the relationship between laws, agency regulations, and court decisions. We also need to know what is happening in the legislative process. Legislators are generally interested in information that comes from credible and informed sources. As HR professionals, we have that information when it comes to the workplace. When laws or agency regulations create unfair or intolerable conditions for either the employee or the employer, we need to oppose them loud and clear. Some organizations enjoy a fairly stable world, while others face growing uncertainty. Environmental uncertainty stems from two variables: the complexity of the environment and how rapidly the environment changes. Organizational environments can be complex or simple. The rate of change for an organization may be fast or slow, depending mostly on technological advances and consumer preferences. Generally, entrepreneurial and flexible organizations have the ability to make rapid change when needed. However, proprietorships, small mom-and-pop shops, and large institutions such as banks and universities are generally slow to change. Flexible human resource programs are suitable for organizations that allow a rapid rate of change, meaning policies are typically informal and adaptable, and can be modified to meet the changing needs of the organization. Organizations that are slow to change should have stable human resource strategies, meaning the recruitment, selection, evaluation, promotion, compensation, and discipline programs are formal and defined. The rate of economic and social change has a profound effect on the human resource strategies of an organization. Because of that, it is critical that we are current and aware of what is going on in our communities and our government issues. Attending HR Association meetings on a monthly basis will and can keep you on top of these important issues. Because uncertainty threatens organizational survival and reduces its effectiveness, organizations use a variety of strategies to reduce environmental uncertainty. Most of these efforts focus on gaining greater control over environmental resources. The first strategies listed here, however, involve internal changes within the organization. That's change the structure planning and forecasting, and then we have mergers and acquisitions, co-optation, and public relations. Changing the organizational structure is just that, moving jobs around, layoffs, restructuring, etc. Planning and forecasting is looking toward the future for things that must change. Mergers and acquisitions are buying other companies that have what you need, either people or materials. Co-optation is to bring members into the executive team or the board of directors or even the management team that will have some type of influence to make your organization successful. And public relations, of course, is building a positive image for your organization. When it comes to human resource management, organizational design and development involves all that you see in this wheel, including planning, organizing, controlling, directing, and staffing. Important terms to know and understand are efficiency and effectiveness. The word efficient refers to performing or functioning in the best possible manner with the least waste of time and effort. The difference between effectiveness and efficiency can be summed up shortly, sweetly, and succinctly. Being effective is about doing the right things, while being efficient is about doing things right. The creation of an organizational structure requires an organization to respond to two basic issues: differentiation and integration. Differentiation is how to divide the work into specialized jobs. Integration is how to coordinate the jobs once they have been divided. We then departmentalize the work. We can put the jobs in departments by function or product. The jobs associated with performing a particular function are grouped together into a department. We also show a chart that is departmentalized by product. Soap, pet food, and food might be what Purina looks like. Different organizations handle decision-making based on the type of company that they are, and it varies in almost every organization. Centralized decision-making is always done at the top, by the owner or the executive team. Decentralized decision-making is done at the level where the work is actually happening, the customer service rep or the production worker. Power and authority must be decentralized to an extent so that organizations capture the knowledge and expertise of talented employees while simultaneously maintaining sufficient centralization to ensure adequate coordination and control. Organizations use a variety of integrating mechanisms to achieve coordination. 5 different methods of achieving coordination have been identified that vary along a continuum of how much discretion is allowed for the worker: direct supervision, standardization of work processes, standardization of outputs, standardization of skills, or mutual adjustment. The key issue associated with division of labor concerns the extent to which jobs should be specialized. Specialization is low when employees perform a variety of different tasks and high when each person performs only a single task. Deciding on the appropriate level of specialization is an important design decision because it has a large impact on organizational productivity. Span of control is about how many employees an individual directs. A range of between 4 to 6 subordinates is often recommended. A much larger span of control may be appropriate depending upon 4 situational variables. 1. Contact required. 2. Level of subordinate education and training. 3. Ability to communicate. And 4. Nature of the task. We talked earlier about organizations by function and department. Another organization structure is the matrix organization. In a matrix organization, each department simultaneously reports to both product and functional managers. The product managers and functional managers have equal authority within the organization, and employees report to both of them. Each organization has its own unique constellation of characteristics that comprise its culture and climate. Climate describes characteristics that are temporary and capable of being changed. Culture refers to organizational rules and beliefs that are relatively enduring and resistant to change. Organizational culture is difficult to understand because it includes virtually every aspect of the organization, and the most important elements of culture are not visible. Cultural artifacts are tangible aspects of culture, the behaviors, the language, and physical symbols that we can perceive with our senses and that reflect the rules and core beliefs of the organization's culture. Shared norms are the situation-specific rules that are often not directly visible but can be inferred from the organization's artifacts. Cultural values represent the collective beliefs, ideals, and feelings of the members about the things that are good, proper, valuable, and right. Shared assumptions provide a foundation for how people think about what happens in organizations and represent the deepest level of culture. Founders have a large influence on the culture of an organization. Their expectations, their decisions, how they treat people, how they spend their time, and what they value have a major impact on what employees value and how outsiders perceive the organization. The employees also bring their own personal cultures, which come from their families, their communities, their religions, professional associations, and their nationalities. Every organization has to confront two major challenges that impact the development of its culture: external adaptation and internal integration. External adaptation refers to the way an organization survives by coping with a constantly changing external environment. Internal integration is concerned with establishing and maintaining effective working relationships among the members of an organization. Organizational cultures are maintained by a combination of forces: employee selection and discipline, rewards and status allocation, leaders' reactions, rites and ceremonies, stories and symbols, and reactions to problems. Changing an organization's culture is considerably more dramatic and difficult than you might think. Steps for changing an organization's culture are: you start with an audit, then you assess the need, then you elicit support from everybody involved, the employees, the managers, senior managers, even your vendors if necessary, and then implement the strategy. Now, once you've actually come up with a strategy, you will then unfreeze the current culture, and then once you implement all the new ideas that you have for creating the kind of culture that you want, you will refreeze the new culture. Every organization requires creativity and innovation to avoid becoming stagnant and obsolete. As the environment changes, organizations require new ideas and creative insights to adapt. Creativity is defined as an ability to produce original, inventive, and valuable ideas or concepts. Innovation refers to the process of making these ideas useful. So, whereas creativity may result in new approaches to solving problems, innovation is the process of turning them into products and services that will actually be used. There are 4 phases to the creative process: preparation, incubation, insight, and verification. Preparation. Creative insights do not simply flash unexpectedly like bolts of lightning. Instead, creativity is usually preceded by much hard work in collecting information and studying the situation. The period of incubation is described as a period of relaxation or withdrawal from the intense preparation period. This period has sometimes been considered a period of unconscious thinking, where the person is actually thinking about being aware of it. Insight Insight occurs when people begin to discover new associations and patterns that provide a useful solution to a problem. Verification involves testing, refining, demonstrating, and communicating the creative ideas following the insight period. To increase creativity, we can hire people with a history of creativity or train current employees in the creative process. Both of these methods have produced mixed results. The best way to increase creativity appears to be creating a supportive climate that fosters exploration and rewards new insights. A supportive climate is essential for creativity to flourish. Reasonable time constraints and deadlines, which often produce a flurry of creative ideas as the deadline approaches, is a great idea. In our role as international HR managers, we must understand global business. Import-export businesses, also known as international trading, are one of the hottest commercial trends of this century. They work as a distributor by focusing on exporting and importing goods and services that cannot be obtained on national soil. A multinational enterprise owns and controls production of goods or services in one or more countries other than their home country. And global firms have multinational branches and headquarters such as Walmart, Coke, Toyota, or General Electric. Locating a manufacturing facility, opening a retail store, or even a call center in another country presents both positive and negative consequences that need to be carefully evaluated. Some of the most important considerations a company should ask are: how well do we know the culture and laws of the foreign country, and are we willing to invest the time and effort necessary to acquire an adequate understanding? What is the availability of labor, and what are the unemployment levels in the foreign country, and what are their participation rates? What are the labor costs in the foreign country, and what kind of labor costs or savings could we expect to achieve? What are the laws protecting employees from being terminated, and can we lay off employees if we downsize? Can we communicate effectively with people in the foreign country, or will there be translation and communication problems? What will be the cost of managing a foreign facility, including shipping costs and expatriate costs? There are 4 cultural values used to explain differing reactions to problems in international organizations. Cultural differences influence the psychological contracts between workers and their companies, and these differences have occasionally created significant challenges for international companies. Hofstede identified 4 cultural values used to explain differing reactions to problems in organizational life: power distance, uncertainty avoidance, individualism versus collectivism, and masculinity versus femininity. Okay, let's move out of global management and talk about leadership theories. The trait leader theory is the idea that people are born with certain character traits. This is the style that is attributed to a leader who others see as a born leader. In response to the early criticisms of the trait approach, theorists began to research leadership as a set of behaviors. The Fiedler contingency model was created by a scientist who studied the personality and characteristics of leaders. His model states that there is no one best style of leadership. Instead, a leader's effectiveness is contingent and based on the situation. Leaders focus their efforts on people as they encourage, inspire, train, empathize, evaluate, and reward. To lead is to inspire, to influence, and to motivate. Effective leaders inspire others to pursue excellence, to extend themselves, and to go beyond their perfunctory job requirements by generating creative ideas. Transactional leaders manage the transactions between the organization and its members. Transformational leaders focus on changing the attitudes and assumptions of employees and building commitment for the organization's mission, objectives, and strategies. Quality leadership is so important that improving the quality of leadership should be an ongoing effort in every organization. The most popular methods of increasing leadership effectiveness are leadership training, managerial selection, managerial placement, organizational engineering, and rewarding leader behavior. An organizational code of ethics can provide general standards of acceptable conduct for members of the organization. Members of the organization are more likely to behave in a moral and ethical way if they know what is expected of them. Companies that make it clear that honesty and integrity are more important are less likely to have problems. The Human Resources Department has an important role in creating a code of ethics for a company. Some of the most important ethical issues in an organization involve how the people in the organization are treated. Although the Human Resource Department can often provide the impetus for creating an organizational code of ethics, in order for the code to be effective, it must be supported and adhered to by top management. A code of ethics will also be more effective if the general members of the organization had input into its creation. What is HR's role in creating an ethical workplace? To answer this question, we must address what ethics are. In the world of business, we are looking at actions that are just and fair. They might be called moral actions. They respect the autonomy and dignity of people, and they are perceived by rational people as being right and proper. The foundation for deciding whether human resource practices are fair and just is based on an examination of the relationship between the person and the organization. The organization is expected to treat people morally, while employees have duties of loyalty, obedience, and confidentiality. Human resource managers are expected to monitor the ethical practices in their companies and protect the interests of employees. Many organizational practices can harm employees, such as divulging personal information, conflicts of interests, payoffs, and bribes. HR managers often play a central role in creating a code of ethics and centers to protect employees. Some of the ethical issues that HR needs to monitor are privacy in the workplace, conflicts of interest, ethics of technology, bribes, payoffs and kickbacks, whistleblowing, deceptive practices, and forms of organizational abuse. A conflict of interest is defined as a situation where a person who has a responsibility to act in the best interest of a company may receive direct personal benefit from his or her actions at the expense of or to the detriment of the company. Examples of conflict of interest are insider trading, sabotage, or falsifying time cards. Different kinds of abuse can occur in countless ways. Employees abuse organizations by stealing, sloppy work, poor attendance, and irresponsible behavior, such as damaging equipment. Organizations abuse employees by creating repressive or unpleasant work environments, requiring excessive overtime, unwanted transfers, and other intrusions of family life. The Sarbanes Oxley Act, named after sponsors U.S. Senator Paul Sarbanes and Representative Michael G. Oxley, requires publicly traded companies and their independent auditors to demonstrate to the SEC that their numbers are accurate and that they have processes in place to ensure accurate reporting. The idea that corporations should be involved in programs that contribute to well-being of its stakeholders, such as helping the poor, improving the environment, and contributing to charities, is called corporate social responsibility. Leaders share the responsibility for the immoral conduct of members who are following orders or responding to the conditions created by their leaders. Organizations can encourage ethical behavior through company culture, internal controls, ethics audits, programs, budgets, resource allocation, performance evaluations, pay incentives, promotion standards, and organizational stories. HR managers are often called upon to do research. We may be sourcing a new benefit program, writing policies and procedures impacted by new laws, or even dealing with the culture change. HR research allows us to find the information we need and diagnose organizational problems such as the effectiveness of a recruiting strategy, the validity of a selection procedure, the value of an incentive compensation program, the cause of an increased grievances, or whether safety training is reducing accidents. The scientific method involves a systematic approach of developing and testing new ideas. It consists of stating a proposition or theory and testing whether it is true. Some of the major characteristics of the scientific method are the use of hypotheses, constructs, and observations. There are 4 basic research designs: case study, field research, field experiment, and lab research. The major strength of a case study is that it produces a wide variety of observations from events that occur spontaneously and naturally. The disadvantage of observational studies is the lack of control in the observation, and the observations made by the observer may be quite different than what the participants thought occurred. One of the major advantages of a field survey is that it is based upon the opinions of a large sample of people. The information from these responses can be analyzed by correlating the relationships between the variables. Although these correlations may be very interesting because they show the interactions between the variables, nothing of a causal nature can be inferred from the correlations. The major disadvantage of a field survey is the inability to infer causation. A field experiment has the benefit of being able to infer causation by showing the effects of the independent variables on the dependent variables. Another advantage of a field experiment is that the data are obtained in a natural setting. The disadvantage of a field survey is that it typically requires a large sample size and the evaluation of many variables in order to understand the complexity of the observations. Another disadvantage is that a field experiment can be very intrusive and disrupt the flow of work. Laboratory studies have the greatest control over outside variables that could influence the results. Because there is greater control in the experimental setting, laboratory studies often require fewer subjects. The degree of control, however, is also one of the disadvantages of laboratory experiments. Behaviors that occur within a laboratory are often rather artificial and do not transfer directly to the external environment. In conducting human resource research, 4 kinds of data may be available: archive data, observations, interviews, and questionnaires. All data collection methods must be both reliable and valid. Reliability is the consistency or repeatability of the measure. Do we get the same results over and over again? Validity is concerned with whether the research instrument actually measures what it is supposed to be measuring. I seriously have no business attempting to teach you statistics. I had to take the class twice in college. However, there are a few areas where we do use statistics in our jobs as HR professionals. We are often asked to justify some of the activities that we do. Simply measuring the activities is not good enough. We need to be able to summarize the data so results can be used to make decisions. For example, what were the results of a training program that we did? A regression analysis shows the relationship between one variable and several other variables. For example, looking at this chart, you can see how the regression analysis shows the relationship between hospital size and the number of nurses that are needed. Don't be afraid of the words correlation coefficient. Every time you think of it, think about how it is a number that shows the relationship between two variables. For example, if you look at a picture of a cute little baby owl or a puppy, your mind immediately de-stresses. You crack a little smile and you're more calm. The two variables are you and the baby animals. The relationship between you and the baby animals makes you happy. In the HR world, we would use the example of happy employees and whether or not they intend to leave. This concludes Unit 1, Part 2.